Our speaker today is one of the amazing entrepreneurs, and I'm really thankful to him for coming here. He started his startup to create a zero trust cloud security platform, and by founding a company called Aporeto. And he has over 20 years of experience. He's going to be telling you his wonderful story, so I'm not going to go more into that side. Over 20 years of experience in the networking industry. Earlier, he was a distinguished engineer at Cisco's INSIMI business unit. And he was the architect for their switching product line. And before that, he spent over a decade at Thymetra, which actually is a key part of their IP product line, which is part of Nokia. Actually, Thymetra was a startup in early 2000. I remember 2003 because I was doing a company in optical switching at that time. So, and then they got acquired by Alcatel. Then Alcatel became Lucent and Alcatel got combined. Then Nokia acquired. Then you know what happened in the last 20 years. Networking has been like total roller coaster. Those who have been in the networking industry, and also in addition to that, Satyam has over 20 patents, over 20 plus patents in the area of networking infrastructure. He holds a MS in EE from USC and a BS in EE from University of Pune. So without taking too much of time, I would like to invite Satyam to share his amazing, colorful and entrepreneurial journey with us tonight. Thank you, Satyam.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you for a great introduction. I'm really thankful to all of you to take out a lot of precious time from your day and come and hear what my journey looked like, right? I attribute a lot of the things that I've been doing to amazing mentors that I've had in my life. And throughout the story, I'll talk about some of the experiences and the mentors and how they've impacted me. And again, my own personal lessons. And I'm a first-time entrepreneur, luck favored as well. And so we'll go through some of these aspects. We will go over two things. I want to kind of give you a little bit of a background into my personal life of where I come from and things like that, because since I was a kid, it taught me lessons and things and what kind of experiences and what do you walk away with. And then for going into the entrepreneurial journey and how I embarked upon that, how did I plan on that, how was I thinking about it. So. And we'll look at both of these things from the past. So, all right. So, looking at some of these things in my early days, I hail from Delhi, born, brought up in Delhi. My parents used to live there. There was this whole idea about education in our family that was pretty stressed on. In fact, that's true for a lot of the Indian families, as we know that, right? My dad made sure that I was going to one of the better schools in Delhi so that I could get the best education framework there. Now, as I was growing up, there were different kind of things or experiences that I was going through. I'll share one of these areas where, my dad got this really cool toy for me. It was a toy train, right? But the train would actually take a lot of batteries. And I was a kid, I had limited pocket money, right? So I realized very quickly that after I got this toy, I'm only buying batteries. So I had to do something about it. And then what happened was that I got a school project, a science project, to say, hey, you got to build something to demo this, and there's some grades for this. So I put two and two together. I said, I'll build a step-down transformer. I just read about it, right? So I went to all these places, I gathered all these electrical things that I didn't even understand what they were, found out some circuit diagrams and stuff, somehow connected them together, okay? And I took it to my school, lit up a bulb saying, hey, here's the power, here's the torch bulb, and it lights it up. And everybody was super happy, got a lot of points. They did not know my ulterior motive. I was trying to kill two birds with one stone, right? So I come back home, I tried this on the train. Well, it works. Beautiful. Now I got my pocket money back. The only problem was that I'd built my first product, and one day I come back from school, nobody's home, my dad's sleeping in a different room, and I connect this thing up. Learned two things that day. Water is a superconductor of electricity, okay? So somehow, I stepped onto a little bit of water, and I had this step-down transformer in my hand. And the second thing that I learned was, if you build an in-house step-down transformer, sometimes it could do AC to DC, but it may not step down. So, I have scars. These 3 fingers were stuck. And I almost electrocuted myself. And I can say that, we used to have a domestic help, and the poor uneducated guy knew that don't go touch him, don't try to pull him out, and go cut the main switch. I learned it going to this good school that, don't go near water, don't do these crazy things, right? So what I realized is when you build a product, you're trying to dog food it, that's exactly what I was trying to do. But what I realized is QA is extremely important. Okay. And I learned this lesson by almost giving up my life for this. So product building tips, that's my background. When I started this company, I came in from the product building expertise. So that's the time when it started. Now, the thing that I want to also say is that, as a kid, I obviously did not know anything of what I wanted to do, right? Good school, interesting toys, everything's taken care of. You're playing games, doing whatever you want, right? You're aimless. That's exactly what I was. I had no idea, right? And why a rebel? Because like other Indian families, and if I basically ask for a show of hands saying, whose parents said you got to be a lawyer, engineer, or a doctor? Can I see a show of hands? Yeah, that's exactly what. So same thing happened with me. My parents, the social circle, everybody was telling me that, I think based on what we see, I think you need to be an engineer. And I said, guess what? I'm not going to be an engineer. So my dad's here today, and he's sitting right here, and I want to actually point out. So I want to point out that, he probably might find this as a surprise. Because he was confused that, you went for a lot of entrance exams. You didn't clear anything. I didn't take one. I didn't take any one. Instead, I would go watch Bollywood movies. That's the rebel I was. I was like, if the whole society is telling me that I need to be an engineer, guess what? I'm not going to do it, right? So, well, all this happy-go-lucky attitude and everything was great. And then there was an interesting turn to destiny, right? My dad is a self-made man. He's an entrepreneur in India. Used to be an entrepreneur, now he's retired. And we were like a single-income, classical Indian family, right? And he fell sick. He was pretty much bedridden. And this is about the time when I was doing all this stuff and not taking my entrance exams and things, right? So obviously his business suffered. And that's when I got a hit of reality saying, life's not easy. You got to do something about it. And I tried to come out with a frame of what should I be doing. And what I did was I said, I need to get into the workforce as soon as I can because I've got responsibilities here. I'm the son who can take care of the family. And guess what? I came to a decision saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to do the fastest way, and that's a 3-year graduation course, and I'm going to go join a graduation course. So I went there, and I felt extremely underutilized, underwhelmed, and I said, this is easy, and I'm not enjoying this, right? So I tried to take a short-term decision because I could only see this problem framework. And that's where I went to the next level. Going into the college days, there's one of my uncles, another mentor for me, and he basically said, you're taking a short-term decision. You're in a problem environment, and you're taking a short-term call that is going to have long-term repercussions. So let me try to help you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fund your education. And I'm going to make sure that you go do your engineering. And how I came to this engineering was because I realized everything's too easy. I love computers. I like to do this stuff. I should be doing engineering. That was another thing that I had to go tell my dad, saying, Dad, you were right. So my uncle came in, stepped in, and said, okay, I'm going to help you, and you're going to go do engineering. And that was his wisdom and his long-term understanding of what this could mean for me and my career. And my uncle himself is a self-made man, runs a very big industry in India. So as I'm going through the engineering, I'm like, okay, after the engineering, I'll go do some kind of job. And my uncle's son used to be in the US studying at that time. So he asked him, saying, hey, what do you think is the right thing to do? And he got an advice saying, I think if you're doing computers and you're doing engineering, your career is in the US. I couldn't dream of it, right? So this is all luck and destiny. So my uncle comes to me and he says, I can't make your life easy. However, I want you to go do your master's because I think that's the right thing to do. So what he did is he held me accountable. He said, I have paid for your education. You have an income potential, and you don't need this. This is the icing on the cake. So I'm going to fund your US education, but it's going to be a loan, and you're going to pay back. So I'm amazed. I don't know where this came from. But if some of these things didn't happen, I wouldn't have been here, right? But I could see the long-term understanding, the long-term vision on how these things can impact careers. So I'm under pressure. I come to USC, LA downtown, very first time in the US. I go to the downtown area and I'm scared. Oh my God, where did I come? 4 in the morning, there's choppers, right? So I've only seen this on TV in India. Anyways, I go through my education. About 9 months later, I move to my first job. It's an internship. And let me tell you, this is right after the dot-com bust, okay? So the batch before me at USC, everybody has 4 job offers. They're getting bonuses as a BMW. So I'm like, I'm going to be fine. 6 months later, nobody has a job. Somehow I get lucky. Again, I don't know how. But I land up a couple of internships, one at Microsoft and the other one at Temetra. Now, there were a bunch of other people who had the same kind of thing where everybody went to the big company environment. And by this time, I had already understood that, don't look at short term. Understand what you want to do. And I knew the startup was the way to go. Silicon Valley is the place to be, right? And plus, when you go for a 4-day interview to Microsoft, it rains all the time. So that also helps. But, so I came to Temetra as an intern. And this is where I meet my next mentor, the founder of Temetra. His name, so both the founders at Temetra, Basil Alwan and Sri Reddy, the introduction that Naveen mentioned. This business, the Temetra business unit at this point does more than $5 billion in revenue a year, right? So this is the story on how you build a great business, right? So I come in as an intern, and I'm told that, you're going to have lunch with the founder today. I said, this is fantastic, This is a great company. The founder has a lunch with you. So I go pick up a pizza. I go with the founder of Temetra, Sri, and we go into a meeting room and we sit down and we talk about a few things. The second dose of accountability. He's like, you know about the economy out there, and we are a startup. We cannot afford to just blow out money. So you are a full-blown headcount, and you're going to have to deliver at that level. And if you don't, I'm going to personally make sure that you're on the next flight back to LA. And I said, I'm not going back to LA downtown. It's scary. So So anyways, the thing is, there's multiple different ways to look at this. That particular statement, the way I took it, it was, well, that's accountability. It makes sense. I have to do my part. That's my job, right? So when I looked at all of this, I worked hard. However, it didn't stop there. That's when the mentor quality started showing up. Then came the next clause, saying, you're a student, you still have about a couple of semesters to go. And I saw your result card, you have straight A's. So while working on all of this stuff, if you miss the letter grade A, you still will not have a job. So I'm like, okay, so got to work for a startup, got to maintain my letter grade. Taught me a very interesting mechanism of time management and productivity. And how do you deal with this? So few months here and there, I go past that. Now, I stay a decent amount of time at Temetra. The environment in the company is very startup-like. Over a course of 10 years, I built 3 completely different products in the networking space: edge routing, core routing, NAT boxes, DPI stuff. And then towards the tail end of that, I basically say, hey, I want to start something from scratch. And that's the time when LTE was coming out. So they said, well, we're going to go build another system on the 4G LTE stuff. And how about you be a part of the key team that's going to do this? So we pretty much built this platform from scratch. And that's where I got a confidence boost that, from being an individual engineer, I've grown to the point that I have won the confidence that I'm being given this kind of an opportunity. So it's a learning opportunity, take it, right? At this point, it's been about 10 years that I've been with the same company. And that's about 6 years longer than the standard Silicon Valley culture, right? So I've learned a lot. I know a lot of people. I've got the goodwill here. And I'm like, I got to go look at something after this. So what's the next thing? And I look at different technologies, and I figure out I'm going to go data centers. And of course, even at Nokia, there's a data center project that's going on, all that kind of stuff in terms of SDN and stuff. But I talk to Shri and I tell him, saying, I know these people. Don't make my life easier. I want to go the hard route. And that's where I end up with this startup called InCME. Great set of people, serial entrepreneurs, you all know them, Mario, Luca, and Prem. Another set of learning on how to hustle at all the times, how every few years you keep building stuff. When the world thinks that, I think they're close to retirement age, I get out of InCME, there's Pensando. These guys are nonstop, right? Gives you a lot of learning, gives you a lot of inspiration. So while we were at InCME, that's where I met Samir. We've spent days and days in dungeons designing their systems and things like that, doing well in the market. And in fact, we ideated quite a bit, the two of us as well, that, I think some things need to be in the NIC. This doesn't work in the cloud. So he was part of that ideation as well. And I said, okay, it's the time's come to kind of take the next part. Now, before I jump on to the next part of my journey, I do want to introduce my wife here, Swati. And, we met like a classical Indian thing, arranged marriage kind of thing. My dad talked to her dad, and, we went and met up and stuff. It was just a slightly unconventional that, we spent about a year talking just so that we understand who we are and things like that. And during these times, I exchanged all of these kind of ideas. And she knew very well that I'm super ambitious. And it's not going to be easy to keep up because I'm pretty obnoxious at times. So, we get married, and she's been the pillar of support, She's the one who's always been telling me that, do not let the failures get to your heart. And do not let success get to your head. So every time I try to do something weird, she's the one who pulls me down. Like in the morning today, are you prepared? Do you know what you're going to say? So, those aspects of things. Startups are hard. They take a toll on the family. I come back from work extremely tired. Startups are all about ups and downs, ups and downs. And I come back on really bad days. A lot of downs, sometimes up. And I come back and she'll be the one who'll cheer me up saying, it's okay. You're writing your own destiny. Just because you were counting on a sale to happen and it didn't happen doesn't change your dreams. Go fight another one. Just because you were thinking this person's going to come join your team and it didn't, and you were really counting on that person, does not matter. You're trying to write your destiny. You have a few of the other work wives with you, my co-founders. Fight with them, figure out something else. Right? And the additional thing is she's herself like a marketing professional, and so I would get a complete health check saying, I don't think you guys are doing well because I don't see enough marketing messages. You're not establishing yourself as a thought leader. And so she works for another startup, and we would get free monitoring check, and I would go give my co-founding team saying, you're responsible for marketing. My wife says we're not doing good marketing. So yeah, all angles, whether it's the support side or supporting from the technology side or the marketing side, great pillar of support, couldn't have done without her. So now I'll go into my journey on an entrepreneurial side, right? These are just experiences hardening me up, getting me ready to get to a decent point. One of the mentors that I mentioned basically said, oh, you want to do a startup? Let me tell you, it's a good recipe. Well, what you need is a market opportunity. You should be able to identify that, there is something changing or there's a need in the market. And then you need a little bit of a product, about the right product, which could potentially solve that problem, right? So you obviously need to build something. And you just need a little bit of luck. Every startup could do with a little bit of luck. But if you have a lot of luck, you don't need the first two. Right? And this is Basil. He's the Temetra founder. He's been an amazing support. He was the executive chairman at Aporeto, and he was literally helping us out day in and day out on different occasions about different pieces of advice. So, 2014, we're still at INCME. I was looking at some other ideas. Might be a surprise for you, Samir. So I say, till when are you going to sit down? At some point, you're going to go take the leap. I think I have the experience. I've worked with people. I've led people. I've motivated them. I understand product management. I've built products. I think I'm ready. I just want to go do something. And then I go into the comfort zone. I'm going to build a networking company. Why? I have a degree in computer networks, and I've just been doing networking. I must build a networking company. So I limited my scope. And then, that's the stats. 30 VCs, more than 200 meetings, 6 months, grueling. The result is zero, almost zero. The reason why I say almost is because the company actually came into existence. I'm just going to keep the name out. But the thing is that why aren't these guys seeing what I'm seeing? I'm an expert at this. If I build this stuff, it's going to make money. I can sell this stuff. So what's the problem? And here's a simplistic analysis of that. Lots of zeros, lots of complicated thing. But let me tell you what that means. $5 million a year out of a customer is always much bigger than 200K a year, right? So when you're talking about business, if you're not thinking big enough, the classical VC market is about investing in an exponential growth, something which is groundbreaking. If you basically say, I'm going to build a business which is going to give you double your money, I don't need to build a startup. You need to think about breaking ground, right? And so now, let me tell you what this actually means. When I was building that networking company, I came to a conclusion that I could charge everybody $2,000 a switch. And we did all this math, that on $2,000 a switch, if I sell 100 switches, that's a big deployment. Let me tell you how many servers connect to those many switches. 10,000 of them. And I realized, if I could make $500 off of that VM or that server, it's a bigger business. It's a very simple calculation. But the point is, the numbers and the revenues have to be there. And I'll ask you this, today we're talking about public cloud or cloud, right? How many people are deploying networking switches? How many people are in the cloud? So I can make a lot more per customer, and there are many more of these customers. So that's where I'm thinking about all of these things, right? So now the next question, stepping out of the comfort zone, right? What can I do? What can I build on a server? And the minute you start thinking about everything is already there, that's the wrong path. You need to really go figure out what's not there. So very high level thing, because now I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. I'll have to go do some studying and understanding from a business perspective, the right technology. What am I going to do? Security or storage? There's a lot of storage companies happening. I can build one. There's a lot of security companies being built. I could do that. So, why did I decide on security? Because now you know that I built a security company. Why did I build a security? There was a very interesting analysis. It's called Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Moo. And why? Because let's understand this. I'm stepping out of the comfort zone. I need to go understand. There's a lot of due diligence that I need to put in. And I'm looking at different things. There's enough companies on both sides. You know, I mean, at a high level, you got to take a bet. You're going to, whatever you want to do. So that works. It worked for me. So then comes the concept of the ideation of Aporeto. So basically, I look at this, okay, I need to do something on the server so that I can charge money per server. And going back to that whole idea of how do you build the recipe, the way the servers are getting deployed is changing. Everybody's going to public cloud. You don't control the infrastructure. So the market opportunity is this cloud. And the standard security measures are not working, the perimeter is gone. Today it's obvious. It wasn't that obvious when we were doing it, because everybody was saying, well, you can use this and you can deploy the same thing and do whatever you need to do. So we said, you know, the insight in there was, for the last 20 years, the security was being done at the networking layer. Why? Because that was the common lowest denominator substrate where you could do something about it, right? When you go into the cloud, networking is not the lowest substrate. So technically, you know, what we think we did at Aporeto is in the OSI stack or the networking stack, we basically inserted a security layer between the application and the networks. That's what the goal was, right? If I build it that way, it's like very limited things. Problems can be complicated, solutions have to be simple. So we're trying to do that, big claim. So I'm going through all of this. By the way, by that time, it wasn't Aporeto, it was just my idea on what we were going to do. And then the stars align. How? In the past, I had met my co-founder Dimitri a few times. We haven't really worked together, right? I'm told that you should always have co-founders who worked very well, they understand each other. Well, guess what? I'm crossing domains, I'm doing different things. So, well, I found a co-founder that I only knew. We had a coffee. The coffee lasted 15 minutes. You know why? He goes, cloud is changing the way things are done. There should be a new way to do security. There's a requirement to build a new product. And we need to build one. I said, you're speaking my mind. And 15 minutes later, we said, we're going to do this. So that's how the stars came together. We also had a third co-founder, Amir, and he was the product management guy from ESX. He'd also worked on SDNs and things like that. So That was the co-founding team, and Aporeto was born. Why did we call the company called Aporeto? Does anybody know what it means? It's Greek. It means stealth. Why? Stealth. Why did we choose a Greek word? Because the common language between the three co-founders was English. We tried every possible name, all the domains were gone. So we said, let's go Greek. But I had one condition. The name of the company had to start with an A. Does anybody know why we do that? Perfect. You guys are way ahead of me. So, simple Greek word, starts with a letter A, means something. But then, we also became trendsetters. If you look at any other security products that are going to getting built at this point, they all have Greek names. There's Istio, Anthos, and just go look at the ecosystem. There's a bunch of, so yeah, I had a Greek co-founder, so we had the lead on that. So as we go into the company, and I'm going to go over just some of the things that we experienced completely transparently. We were first-time entrepreneurs. I'm happy to share all my experiences that we went through, right? So we wanted to raise the money. We basically had come up with this idea. Then we said, okay, how are we going to go do this? And we said, we're going to give ourselves a timeline. By Thanksgiving or sometime around that, which was about 2 months away, we should have a term sheet. The idea was so intriguing and so detailed. It was just still a PowerPoint slide. It wasn't a prototype that we had built. That we were told that, by our first investor, Peter Wagner Wing, great respect for him. He basically said, I've looked at the industry. I think this is an area that needs investment. And I think yours is the best thought through, all-encompassing, and I think this could be an interesting thing, right? So keep in mind, we're not thinking business yet. We're just thinking $500 a VM, not really go to market and all that kind of stuff. Dimitri's technical, I'm technical. A little bit businessy is Amir. And we're trying to figure out how we're going to do this, right? So we go to a bunch of customers. They're like, we love it. However, this is so key to our infrastructure, we're going to build it on our own. 10 of them. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's good. So then it comes to building a team, right? We're trying to build a product. We pay particular attention to getting the right diversity from all different places, from all different backgrounds, because we're now trying to build a completely different kind of a thing. It's not been built in the past. So we start looking at different things. We step out, again, we don't go the easy route. It's not like I know 5 of these people, let me just go get them. It's like finding the right people and how do you build that team. And I was responsible at that time for engineering, and Dimitri was the CEO. And the ones in red is basically we had complete fallout between the founders. We were fighting tooth and nail. One guy says, I'm going to do open source. The other one says, no, it's going to be a paid product. I don't know how to monetize open source. I don't think paid enterprise software makes sense. We would do everything, right? And these are good, these are healthy. Not every fight is a bad fight, right? I mean, you express yourself, you walk away, you understand, you think differently, you come back and you figure out. So we agreed on something. We said we're going to, because the concept of stuff that we're doing is so new, that we go open up certain part of one of the core pieces of our product. Because when we go into a customer, we need to show them this is real and this is how it works. And if you really want, in some limited way, you could use it. Let me tell you what that did for us. We did not have a sales team. The first customer found us. This is in the first year, right? So because there's a traditional 10 people, 20 people teams in the customer feedback, they were all going to build it, right? So the first customer comes in, tells us what we are doing, says, this is what you do for me. I have this big Kubernetes cluster on one side, I have the data center on the other side, I have a big firewall over there. Kubernetes just keeps changing my IP addresses. I don't know how to do this firewall thing. I'm not going to wake up at 3 in the morning. You transcend the network because you're in between the application and the network layer, and so you just secure it, and I'm going to use this. So this was some Bitcoin version of it based out of Canada, and they loved this product. So the open source certain aspect of it helped us, right? It was some kind of publicity, but we never built a complete community around it. So the person was looking at some of these solutions and things like that, and that's where a little bit of the marketing that we had done, saying this is an open source project which can solve Kubernetes security. So if you would do Kubernetes security, that name would pop up, and if you're a techie guy, you would go look at the README and you'd say, can I install this, do something? And then eventually they said, well, let me just send an email, and we got connected and we started from there, right? But again, we might have had different outcomes and things like that because we went the paid enterprise software route, but you could easily go the open source. We have those fights that we had, or those altercations, have given us great insight of how to build one versus the other, and both of them can work phenomenally well.
So this first customer that found you, can you hold the questions so that you can see them in the other?
So we go get a few more customers. We're talking to Bart. They're rolling out some interesting things. We show them capabilities that are just not possible, right? And so we win a few more customers. We go raise our Series A. It's looking a little more serious. And then Google shows interest. They're like, you're doing some interesting stuff here. And we want to buy yours. We said, what's the idea? They're like, we have this great project called Istio and Kubernetes. We want you guys to come and run that. It's similar, but I think it's better. So you ditch your stuff, come work for us. And we said we were not looking for a job. We didn't start the company because we were looking for a job. So we declined that very quickly. So now comes the next debate. We should build more. We should support more things. It should be more complete. Or should we sell soon? You've got a product that's a minimal viable product. Should we sell? Should we build? And this is a classical debate. If you ask an engineer, he will always say, the product's not perfect. Let's build a little more. And you got to find the right balance. The idea is about finding the right balance. You got to be solving the one scenario really good, which can be repeatable. And that's where everything starts coming in. We had such a big fallout that we had a new CEO, and we actually hired a sales guy, saying, it's time, technologists cannot run this. We need a CEO. Then came the next set of things that, should we just keep building more and more things? We support Kubernetes and we support this. Should we just support that, serverless and all that kind of stuff? Or should we focus on one thing, right? So obviously if you ask the engineers in the house, they're going to say, let's build more. Let's build other things. It's not a complete solution, right? So anyways, we go through these debates. We had a new CEO in town. We got new sales guy, or first sales guys in place. We won. We started getting a pipeline. We built some more customers and things. But we were experiencing a problem. Every time we would show our technology, they'd be like, I love this. And one guy in the room would go, I can use it for this. The other guy would go, I could use it for that. And we were pitching it like that. We were saying, you have this cloud problem, we can solve everything, right? When you go and tell somebody we can solve everything, then there are going to be 5 people in the room, they're going to have 5 different ways to use it, and then they're going to fight on who's going to deploy it first, or who's going to do the POC, or why this is very complicated, and now you've got a sales disaster, right? We ran into that multiple times. So then comes the next thing, the big customer. And I think it's public at the moment. It was Comcast. They're basically looking at the solution. We have cloud deployments, we have on-prem deployments. I want to, we do this 60 applications every 2 months or whatever, and we take a lot of time. This can speed the things up because this is operational security at speed kind of thing, right? But how do I buy from a startup? So let's de-risk it. let's force a round B. I'll give you revenues, pretty big size revenues, and at the same time, I'm going to give you a chunk of investment. Now you have a lot of money. And that at least gives us confidence that if we start deploying this around, you're not going to go away just with a blink of an eye, right? So we were pretty much forced into a round B over there. Again, some churn, things not working, pipeline's not looking great. We're getting fewer customers, but bigger deals, right? Not what startups want. They want lots of customers, tiny deals. That's just how it is, right? I mean, we say that's how sales. But we were building a product that if you go all in, the customer will give you bigger revenues. And in the whole identity-based segmentation across L3, L4, L7, I mean, this is a complex project. Bigger companies take time to deploy this, right? So you got to understand what you're building, what the selling motions are, right? But then the VCs will say, lot of customers, little revenue. There's no little revenue. You can't deploy this in a little revenue place, right? So we get a new CRO, and our CRO was this guy called Sunil Sampath. Completely demystified sales for me. He's got an engineering background, and I asked him, saying, why is sales so abstract? And he said, it's not. And he gave me a complete breakdown on how he thinks about sales. And I said, that makes sense, right? How you go build your pipelines, how you work with the marketing guys and stuff like that. He demystified that. And that could be a completely different discussion. Some of the fintechs start showing interest, saying, we have compliance issues and things. We love this capability. I can just in time change my policies. And this is very agile for our environment. And let's go do this, right? And as I mentioned, smaller number of customer, big deal sizes. That's what we're going through. And then we interact with Palo Alto, which is on an acquisition spree. They're trying to build a good cloud strategy. And I meet the CEO, Nikesh. And he basically says, what is your goal? And I said, I know we are going through some sales challenges, but I have two routes I can take. I can either, we just hired a new CRO, and we go 12 months, and I prove to you that I can generate a good revenue. And he said, I get that, and I like your ambition. But what do you want to really do? And he got this answer out of me, which is true to the core. I'm a product guy, and I take a lot of pride if the stuff that I built is deployed everywhere, and it works, and it solves people's problems. And the minute he heard that, great sales guy, he latched onto that, and he basically said, come on over, we're going to do 10 times over for sure. And that's how the discussion started. So amazing sales guy. But what I liked about the Palo Alto aspect is that they're the company which understand that the landscape's changing and they need to reinvent, and they're reinventing in a very good way. I liked some of these things that I was hearing, and I said this could be a good partnership. Not just that, everything sounds great from the top. At the same time, it allows these set of first-time entrepreneurs to call it a success in certain ways, right? So what is the success? Success, in my mind, is not determined by the exit price. It's determined by the fact that you took a concept, you found the market, you built a product, you convinced some of the big guys to deploy it. So you went from a concept to a product. And that's the success I believe Aporeto achieved. So that's my story. And sharing all lessons that I've learned. Ideas are cheap, execution's money. I think everybody knows that. In a day, we think about 3 ideas saying, I wish if this was there, or I think you can do something over there. You do it 3 times a day, at least. The point is, at what point in time are you going to get up from your seat and say, I'm going to put 100% behind this, 100% of me. and I'm going to fight every struggle to make this a reality. So, a lot of the people in this room are entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs, and they're sitting on the fence saying, I'm not ready yet. It's for you to decide at some point. Go 100%, there's no easy route. And then the other things, if you think you fight with your spouse, you have work wives. So carefully choose your founders, and after you've carefully selected them, you're going to fight and fight bad. You're not going to talk to them for days. You're going to curse the heck out of them. It happens, it's real. It's all good. It's hard. Nothing about building startups is going to be easy. You're going to see ups and downs on a daily basis. I've personally experienced, I get up in the morning, I go to work, we won a deal. Great. Next hour, that customer is complaining, things not working. Oh, by the way, that guy is leaving because Uber paid them a shitload of money. By the time evening, you don't know what's going on. And that's where the support system comes in. You go back home and say, I had a bad day. Like, maybe tomorrow's going to be better. So, a few things on the sales side, hard learns for me. I'm a pure engineering background, right? So, Aporeto was learning on steroids for me in terms of marketing and sales. I knew zero, and I think I know more than zero now. So, the point is, when you're building a company and things like that, don't build a perfect product. Find a perfect use case that works and think about selling quicker. The investors who have invested in you, they're not looking at the shiny product that nobody buys. If it's not deployed, it's useless. Okay? So start working on that quicker. Think sooner, especially for the technologist entrepreneurs. Simple versus complex sales process, I described, we do have a complex go-to-market. When we go in, because of the transformation in the cloud, the network security guy says, I'm going to own this. I used to do this. The security guy says, but I'm going to bless this. You have two guys in the room, both of them need to bless it. That's what is called a complicated sale. A simple sale is, you're an engineering execution guy, you need a repository system, you take out your credit card and you swipe and you buy GitLab or GitHub. Take your pick. One guy decides, pays, buys, that's a simple sales process. Think simple sales. You got to do that. And short versus long, again, I love it, but this is so core to my infrastructure, I'm going to test the heck out of this for like 9 months. So keep coming back to me, keep supporting, keep sending people. People cost money. You're a startup. You cannot afford to do 9 months. These are all lessons we've personally learned. Find a repeatable sales. Kind of falls into the similar model. If it is one person deciding and they can make a quick decision, they can take out a credit card. This is what the VCs are talking about. I need 100,000 of $100. I'm not looking for one guy giving you $10 million. And the hardest one is, I think I was slow at times when I knew there was a problem and I didn't react quicker. I've talked to my co-founders, they agree. So, startup, unlike the big companies, you don't say this needs to get corrected and I'm going to go through a 3-month motion. People who come and join startups and work over there, they should be nimble and they should understand this. And when things don't work, they should fix it quick. Continuing the journey, what's up next? I have personal aims and goals, and I'll quote a stanza from Robert Frost. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep. I have promises to keep to myself and my wife, so I have miles before I sleep. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I didn't know you're a poet also.
I took it from Robert Frost.
I'm sure you'll get a feedback in the night how the poem was. Thank you. So, Havasji, thank you again. Satyam for this amazing and obviously lots of wisdom for hopefully all of you enjoyed. And before, I'll just ask you one question to open, and then obviously the gentleman who wanted to ask, you'll be the first one. Sorry about, because we wanted him to finish the story, otherwise, many times it goes into different directions. So my question is just to, since I'm going to be here, so I have the right to get the first question. Okay, so sorry about that. so my first question would be, I would love to hear about that demystifying process you mentioned. Your second CRM, Chief Revenue Officer, told you about the sales, just for all of us to learn.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
So my biggest realization while doing Aporeto is, till date, before I started Aporeto, I always thought I'm the coolest guy in town. I build the hardest stuff in the world. I'm an engineer. Well, guess what? The reality hit me, because when we did not have any sales guy, and they said, you're the founder, go talk to the customers that you've already done that, go sell this. And trust me, there's nothing harder than convincing the other guy to say, take out your wallet, give me that $100 note. I'm talking $100. And the product that we were selling tells you $100,000. So sales and marketing, a lot of times I've heard this with engineers in the companies saying, oh, these guys just go for expensive dinners. I used to say that too. But there is an art to this. So demystifying this, how do you build a pipeline, for example? So I'll focus in on just one aspect of it. How do you build a pipeline? How is your demand gen working? So we apparently had a pipeline, and we always thought it was very healthy. There's $10 million in the next month. And we realized nothing's working. So what are the relations? How are we actually attacking this customer? What is the relation? Understanding who the buyer is, who the influencer is, and once you're a seasoned salesperson, you are able to give it a weighted probability in a very systematic manner. So the prediction that will come out of the pipeline that's got generated is going to be more close to real, right? And how do you assign these probabilities? Well, I talked to a guy in IBM. So the other guy says, so we're making a sale here. It's like, no. His boss is this guy, and that guy's boss is this guy, and he's probably got the wallet and the check. And so we are 3 steps away from converting this into a reality. So just from measuring the pipeline on what's real and what's not is an art. Similarly, how do you build the pipeline? How do you convert it? Are you going to have an enterprise sales, foot soldiers going out there? Or is this a technology that I'll convert using SDRs? There's a lot of different arts, Imagine if I actually tell somebody saying, I'm calling you and I want to sell you a Kubernetes solution. You can imagine it's a wrong way of selling it. We did it. The guy was like, what are you talking about? So there's a few of those aspects. So that's why I'm focusing only on one aspect, because that question in itself can consume a good half hour.
Thank you, Satyam. Gentlemen, you wanted to ask?
Yes, so wow,
Deep.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you for sharing your story. Fascinating journey that you have. So I had actually 2 parts I wanted to ask you about. One, as you were building the company, you talked a lot about the founders and the sort of trials and tribulations you went through with that. But as you were building the team, how did you discern between having drivers and versus doers in your team? So as you were scaling, you didn't end up being the bottleneck for the decision process. And second of all, when you had this interaction with Palo Alto Networks for the acquisition, could you elaborate a bit on how that came about in terms of determining the valuation for what was a fair number for you folks and for Palo Alto Networks? Thank you.
Fair enough. So the first part, how did we go about building the team? And some of the experiences that I have shared, were from the aspects of, from an entrepreneurship aspect. I think we value our people a lot. People are extremely key to the company that you're building. Now, have you heard of this concept called throw compute at the problem? When something's not working, it needs tremendous processing power. So you just make a big job and you throw it into the cloud and say, throw compute at the problem, you need a lot of horsepower, it'll run and it'll come out. We actually used to use that for hiring people. I remember my days when I have been asked that if the guy in front of you is wearing this color hat and the guy behind you is wearing this color hat, what color are you wearing? Right? Puzzles. They are a style of interviews. Nothing to ridicule them. That doesn't tell me if you will get the work done, right? So we had a very interesting concept that we came up early on where we said, let's just assume you're a part of the team. You're given a task. Based on the expertise area, this is the task, what it defines. So if you're like building a SaaS platform, we'll go into like REST APIs, security, tokens, all those kind of things. We'll give you a project. And we'll say, this project could easily take like 3 hours, or it could take 3 days. So it'll tell me how long you need to do this. How did you time manage yourself? What part did you attack? What part did you say can be done, is easy, stub it out, right? So in terms of engineering, that was the philosophy that we were using. We would give you a task and we would say, how would you self-manage? You're a startup. Nobody's going to come and manage you saying, did you get your work done? That doesn't work, right? So first of all of these people are like self-driven, motivated. They know how to manage time. We have an excellent team of a collection of these. Drivers. You need to go out of the technical interviews and you need to talk about different things on personal aspects, on how they have dealt with certain things. And there's specific questions that you can ask them in personal interviews. You know, whenever we think about this, we think personal interviews, what are we doing here? But I found this art from this guy called Bob Tinker. He was advising us for a bit. And he said, I want to talk to you. And he started asking me questions in different ways. And I said, Bob, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm trying to assess from my perspective. And honestly, I don't remember the exact questions, but it was enlightening to me when he explained to me that, you know, if you tell me your exact problem on how you solved a specific thing, these are the things I'm observing. And I said, I've never thought about this because to me, logic makes the most sense. And you're telling me how abstract works. So we had looked at some of those aspects. We built it into our interview pipelines and stuff. And that would give you a clearer idea. And again, you know, I mean, if you're building a team of high level, high caliber people, sometimes your bets are going to go wrong. And this is where management comes in, where the idea is that, you know, you as a manager cannot say, you should work like this. The beauty should be, I have 30 of these people, who's got what strengths? And am I doing the right thing by utilizing the right person for the right role? So sometimes you think this person would be a driver, but they wouldn't be, and it would clear up over 2-3 months. But then somebody else that you didn't think was a driver would show up as a driver. But as long as you're collecting good set of people and you're managing this the right way, it's perfect. Your second question was about Palo Alto and valuation and things like that. You know, negotiation is such an interesting thing that the buyer always thinks he overpaid and the seller always thinks he got underpaid. I'm the seller. I got grossly underpaid by a great sales guy. Sold me a vision, understood what I was saying, and sold me and got a cheap deal.
But you're happy the product is going to be deployed everywhere.
Yeah, so I mean, and I mentioned, you know, I mean, it's not about the price. I mean, you know, the thing is, if it's a 150 or a 200 or 250, that doesn't change the game. The goal changes when you basically say it's not an acquisition, it's a public company. To me, that's where it changes. And overall, the one thing that was important to me on how this deal was getting structured, that the folks that we had, the people who had worked, they were going to get the right things out of this. You know, companies go through dilution. When we gave out some offers to certain people, even I didn't expect that dilution was going to be a certain amount, right? It was more than, at times, what I expected. It was less than what I expected. But in this whole acquisition deal, you know, I mean, there's a marketing number, but then there's also a generous equity grant for RSUs and stuff. And we've tried to make sure that we are fair with the folks and they've been given what they deserve.
Next question, if you have one, you can raise your hand.
Yeah, thank
Oh, sorry, get you right after Bank.
Yes, so hi, I have a couple of questions. I didn't quite understand why you wanted to name your company with an A. And the second question is, I work for a technical talent recruiting firm, so, and I've been a technical recruiter for 15 years, so I'm curious to know, how did you go about picking a recruiter, a talent acquisition team, and talent? Where did you source your talent from, considering that you were a startup and you're competing with so many companies in Silicon Valley who are giving RSUs and stock and equity and what have you? So,
Absolutely. So company starts with the name A because anytime you go to a conference, there's a listing and you're always at the top. So I'll give you an example. Right before we got acquired, we got listed in the top 100 some companies picked globally by CNBC or something. Aporeto shows up at the top. We were clearly number one. We were. That's what I tell everyone. So that was the first part. The second part, technical recruiting. It's very hard. There's multiple things that we try out. There's the companies, there's the Vatries of the world, there's the online websites and things like that. We have a very clear plan. You know, we invested in an ATS system early on so that we know that when good guys come into the pipeline, they don't get dropped out and things like that. It was an investment that we made fairly early on. The second thing is, you know, I was very ruthless. I was very ruthless because at one point I had 7 recruiters. And I was trying to scale up the team, and it became very clear who's going to work for me. And I can actually give a shout out to them. One of them is this guy called Joseph Gordon. So yeah, please. I think he's an excellent guy. And the other guy was Tyler Moore. Tyler works as an individual guy, but it would be the lowest overhead. I would give him a 3-line requirement, and the resume that would come back, I would literally find myself hiring 1 out of the 2 resumes he would send. Agencies, independent guys. We also went through some of these online websites.
Can you repeat those 2 names?
Joseph Gordon, he works for a company called Kofi Group. And when you reach out to him, say Satyam sent you guys, you'll get good treatment on that. And the other one was Tyler Moore. He's just been phenomenal, not just here, but in the past. There's been a bunch of recruiters who've been short-sighted. They basically said, you're a startup and you're telling me you're going to give me 18%, I get 20% somewhere else. Well, guess what? Some of these recruiters worked with me. They understood the dynamics. It wasn't always about the money. And now the first requirement that comes out goes to them, right? And now that we are bigger, or even in the last few years, I'm talking this 18%, 15%, when we were like seed round, right? You got a couple of $1 million and you want to be mindful of that. You just don't want to give $5,000, $10,000 away just for the heck of it. So I negotiated it. But some of the guys who were very smart, they were like, you know, you're paying me 5% less. When you get your A round, then I'm going to send you guys. Time came for A, they might be phenomenal. I stopped working because they signed a contract. They said, I'm going to do this for you. And they didn't live up to that end of the bargain, right? And there are a bunch of these recruiters who know they don't get a response from me, ever.
Right, next question, we have one in the back.
Hi, I'll ask 2 questions as well. So my first question was, how often did you guys pivot from your original idea? And if you were to relive your last 5 years of your life, what would you do differently, apart from asking more from Palo Alto?
Yeah. So how many times did we pivot? We didn't fundamentally pivot, okay?
You did?
We did not. Because when we went in, we had a broader goal. And this is where we came into the innovations. You know, my co-founder is a Bell Labs guy. I've written a bunch of patents. And we spent some good quality time together. And one of the innovations that we did, or what Aporeto is known for, is called workload identity. So everybody knows about identity as user identity. So the analogy is Okta is to user identity what Aporeto is to workload identity. And if you understand that analogy, if the user security is gone past and leaps and bounds and things like that, then I think workload can be secured using identity. The fundamental thing is, if you have end-to-end authentication and authorization, and I'll convert that into layman terms, when you come and talk to me, you know who I am. I'll agree on who you are if you show me your ID card. We are both authenticated. We are who we are. But then I'm not going to tell you on some private matter if you ask me a question. That's authorization. So we are allowed to talk about certain things. We are not allowed to talk about certain things. That's authorization. If we apply that exact same concept to workloads, you will get a zero trust environment where applications are secure. Okay? So that was the fundamental concept. The problem that we were running into was the minute we understood how this concept works, the big goal, the big vision that I could see from Aporeto was, using this identity, we were solving the cloud security problem, but that was not the only thing. We could actually solve the IoT problem at scale. We could solve the beyond core problem at scale. And these were all visions. The point is, when you make a business bet on cloud security and you generate enough revenue out of it, and you get to a decent size of the company, that's when you can go invest in some of these verticals. So I'm sorry, I couldn't carry out that dream, and we're already at Palo Alto. So the point is, when we set out and very early on we realized we have the potential of becoming a big security company if we make enough revenues in one area and invest in other areas. We just couldn't fulfill it.
Next one in the back, right?
Sorry, you had a second question, which was...
If you were to relive the journey,
So,
what would you change?
so the reliving, I kind of put down my lessons. I learned a lot. We were a technical co-founding team. And at this point, I have no qualms about saying we were weaker on the business side. We understand a lot more of that. Some of the points I actually put in there. And the little bit of pivots that we did towards the end is because when closer to the Q3, Q4 of last year, was because we said, hey, I can use this concept of identity to do certain other things which people can buy for like 100 node licenses, and that'll get us through the door, and then we can worry about expanding. So the land and the expand. We were going through a big land and then maybe some expands and all that kind of stuff. So those were some business ways on how do you penetrate in is extremely important. And I will actually point out to some of the other Palo Alto acquisitions. Some of the folks have been here as well. Varun runs Prisma Cloud at Palo Alto. Slavik, these guys built a low friction, quick entry point, right? And then they're now growing revenues and things like that. We built a big revenue with big hindrance to the penetration, right? So those were the things that I would rethink when I think about business again. So I'm a few cents wiser on the business and marketing side after doing this.
Go with SMB versus
Can we
enterprise, or
just keep one question, please, so everyone gets it, then we can come back.
sorry.
Hey, Satyam. Sorry, fantastic story. Thanks for sharing. One thing that wasn't clear is, of course, you guys were debating about the open source enterprise, and there's also open core model, which is you have an open source and enterprise. So how did the journey eventually shape up? What started and where did you eventually end by the time you got sold? That path wasn't clear.
So we were paid enterprise software company with some open core aspects of things. The key thing that I believe is there is a way to build an open source company. If a startup tries to convert a closed source company 2 years into the game into the open source company, it feels very reactive. That's not what you built naturally. There's a way to build open source company. It should be in the DNA. That's how you should start. That's how you should think about it. It shouldn't be a reactive thing. The other very important part that I believe about open source, the thing that makes open source successful is the community around it. So it's not easy. You got to invest in it, and you got to understand how you're going to monetize this. Now, I'll be very clear. that it's not just about entrepreneurs, it's also about the investors, okay? There are going to be investors who are going to back open source because that's their DNA. There's going to be investors who are not going to be okay with this, right? So these are DNAs and mixes. There is a way to build open source, and from what my experiences are, if I were to build an open source company, the thing that I understand about it is, if you get the community and you get the adoption, the sales team can be significantly smaller by investing in this community. And now you've got adoption, so then how do you convert it into service contracts and things like that, right? So there's lots of businesses, and we can, instead of like going into an analysis, I'm happy to talk about some of these offline, because these are all valid businesses, right? But I have my own viewpoint.
Actually, that's a very good point on open source. I think I had shared with you. Probably Venk remembers one time, the largest open source, I would say, successful company has been Red Hat. Most of you know, right? Multi-billion-dollar public company. But there was a lot of investment, if you look at it, early 2000, because every part of enterprise software, there is an open source company funded by VC, but you haven't heard of many which have gone there, right? So one of the things people misunderstand, I also misunderstood until we went for this talk with Red Hat. The CEO had come to a bunch of TI charter members. He said the biggest thing which Satyam also just mentioned is many people don't realize the open source companies are only successful because of the community they build around it. So otherwise you just think you write some software, give it out, no one cares about it. So anyway, that's just point you also mentioned, like you have to build a community, have a DNA right from the beginning, otherwise it's not going to work.
And I'm going to give you a trivia.
You have to invest in marketing and evangelism early on, because you two were like the technical co-founders, right?
Yes.
So you didn't have a marketing or a developer evangelist or someone full-time into that evangelizing.
Yeah, we didn't. We never had a developer evangelist. We had marketing folks, and we saw some churns to go through that. We have interesting lessons that we've learned over there. On the open source aspect of it, I'll put out a trivia question without answering it. Who makes the most money out of Kubernetes?
Google.
Sorry?
Google.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's Red Hat.
All right, we have a question in the back.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm glad you acknowledged the contribution of your wife. So thank you for that. I have two questions. One is just building up on the marketing question. If you were to do it all over again, would you change anything in early stage marketing? That's one question. And the second is, in your very early stages, was there any very tough employee-related decision that you had to make, and how did that go?
So the first part, marketing, if I were to do things differently, absolutely. We innovated on some of these concepts. These concepts were never existing, and I think we did a horrible, absolutely horrible job of establishing ourselves as thought leaders. I do want to talk about this just a tad bit. We are based on workload identity, and we predate Istio by more than a year. When we had interacted with some of the folks in Google, one of the questions that had popped up was, which of you has worked at Google? And we said, nobody. Nobody from our team is from Google. So just to kind of give you a background, so we did a horrible job at establishing our thought leadership. We did not do enough. It took time for market to understand, and we lost very valuable time. So that's from the marketing side. I'm sorry, your second question was?
Any tough employee situation, as you say?
Yeah, so, we were extremely lucky about tough employee situations. Somehow through our interviews and things like that, the people who actually came in knew they were coming for a startup, right? So we actually did not have any lawsuits or whatever saying you're not treating me correctly or whatever. But there were some hard employee situations where people actually said, well, I'm not doing my part, and I think it's better for us to part ways and go do. So we had some of those aspects as well. And in certain other areas, we did have some tough employee situations where the work's just not getting done. And at that point, I had to make some hard calls. It's nothing personal. right? I mean, as long as we understand when we're working for startups, even the founder shouldn't be put in a security kind of a basket saying, because you're a founder, you shouldn't get fired. If you're not doing your job, you should automatically get out, no harm done. Or if things just continue to pursue like that, then the right people should take right actions as soon as possible. You don't have the luxury of wasting resources.
All right. Next question we have over here.
So I didn't need this, but okay. So I'm actually not in this area, and so I'm making a comment. I'm a recruiter in medical device and biotech, but I'm here because I enjoy entrepreneurship, and my son works for Palo Alto Networks, and he loves the company. And when he joined it, he got a project to do on Friday. And he told me that he was never going to get the job. He said, I don't know anything, I'm not going to get it, but they asked me to do this, so I'm going to do this, so at least I get to learn something. And then he talked to them on Monday, and then he got the job. So I kind of know that, and he loves the company. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great environment. I think he's in good hands. I have made a personal decision to basically take Aporeto in because I agree on the vision. Don't worry about the stock price, it's okay. These are business impacts that happen, but I think I have heard it straight from Nikesh's mouth, and I believe in the vision. That's why I'm there, and I'll do my best to contribute to the success.
Next question right here.
Thank you very much for sharing your story and your journey. Going back to your early ages and early years, do you feel that a lot of the lessons that you learned and applied in your entrepreneurship, did you learn them kind of on the spot, or were they more retrospective? Like, of course, almost electrocuting yourself was probably more on the spot, but more of a approach, kind of philosophical approach.
Yeah, so, I mean, remember when I was in the early ages, I was aimless. I had no idea what I'm doing. But certain experiences that you have in life build attributes in you. Are you going to take the easy route all the time, or are you going to consider taking a hard route? These are just attributes that get built over time. And then when you reflect back, I probably never thought about this until I was asked to talk about this. And that's when I realized saying, this is how I built certain of these characteristics. And that's what makes me. It wasn't a planned thing. I think, in fact, what I would like to say is, I think I'm as ordinary as anyone, or I'm as special as anyone. My goal here is to basically say, for all those of you who are sitting on the fence saying, should I do this or not? And I'm sharing that I'm the first time guy, and you can see how many mistakes I made. So it's great that we have a successful outcome, but these lessons would have enriched you anyways, right? So this is learning on steroids. That's what being a part of startup is, that you will do more in a day that you would do in a week if you were just sitting on the backseat, right? This is what people say, I took the elevator. The startups are the elevator. You could also take the stairs.
So go follow your dreams.
Absolutely.
So for something that was your brainchild and you put your heart and soul into it, and then when it came time to bring in a new CEO, how easy or difficult was it, and especially when that person was not part of the journey with you right from the beginning?
Yeah, so just a clarification, it's the brainchild for the founders. We did this together, okay? So literally we have patterns and stuff that we built together. And I will say this, I will attribute that, the main co-founder at Aporeto was Dimitri, okay? He was the technology brainchild behind this. I was supplementing him with other skills. And I think that, when we had this very hard discussion that, we need to start selling, we are not ready to sell or whatever, that suggestion was coming from me because, coming from India, we start doing business at a very young age, buying off of street vendors and stuff, negotiations, My wife was telling me she did an MBA course on negotiations. Said I did that in streets, right? So the point is there's a little bit of business and negotiation that you do on a daily basis. Maybe that attributed, but I could see that, I'm getting uncomfortable. I'm doing engineering and I'm getting uncomfortable. We're not selling. You got to win the confidence of the market, of the investors. And so the suggestion was actually coming from me. And so the person who actually took a backseat or was not looking at this was my co-founder. And at one point when he acknowledged the problem, so once you make a decision, you acknowledge a problem, then you go together as a team and you basically make a decision, right? And then you do the best you can to get the right person who you think is going to help you. So it's startups all about hard decisions. This was 1 out of 1,000.
All right, next question.
Hi. Now that you mentioned that it's 1 out of 1,000 decisions, I imagine that in a startup you have all these problems happening everywhere. So what was your approach to prioritizing which ones you will tackle and in what order?
So luckily all 1,000 of them were not happening at the same time. Only 1,000 of them happened over 4 years. So, average it out, there were 2-3 of them. And I told you, you would get a little bit of breather. You would be on your toes. But problems wouldn't line up within 10 minutes. They would line up at least hours apart, right? And you would live. The key thing is, as I mentioned earlier, my wife says, don't let the failures go to your heart, right? So when something goes wrong, that's not what you wanted, right? Luckily, we had an amazing retention rate, but we did lose people. We lost people to Uber. We lost people to other companies who will just come and put in a lot of, right? And so you will feel bad. And you'll be like, we did everything that we could, but it's beyond my control. Let's go solve the next problem. Now I need to hire the person who's going to replace this guy. So challenges, small and big, would keep happening. You would just have to get back up and keep handling this. But luckily, we never had like 10 problems in the same day. And if we had 2-3 of them, then we at least had 3 co-founders, and then we had a bigger executive team, and so we were able to manage all of this divide and conquer.
You will have last question.
Congratulations, Satyam, and thanks for sharing your story. So the question is, like you said, right, there are many ups and downs in the startups, more downs than ups. So how do you deal with those difficult times when things don't go the way planned? And as a co-founder, right, at the same time, how do you keep motivating employees, to focus and execute right things?
The key thing about anybody who's coming and working for a startup, you would expect them to have maturity. Okay, and the worst thing you can do is try to hide things away. If there's critical things that impact the employees, they need to know, right? We are working on a customer POC, the customer POC is not converting or that kind of thing happening. I would try to be open about it, right? On a regular basis, you would have the ups and downs. Maybe the other startups' experiences are different. I'm just talking about from my perspective, we had more downs than ups. Because if we had more ups, we would have had 1,000 customers, right? So, but yeah, you deal with the problems on a day-to-day basis, and you try to fight it, you get to the next level, and you move on. You don't let it bog you down. You'll obviously get hit pretty bad at times, but then that's what it takes. So if you're trying to go in for this journey, harden yourself up. This living through problems you should train yourself on how I'm going to do this.
One last question from the audience.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add on to Vin's question, is that you talked about the thought leadership, right? So was the challenge around zero trust, or is it this micro-segmentation or workload identity? So which piece did you think that you could have established better thought leadership from the early days? Which piece? Because okay, because some of these are pretty known by the time you started. Some of these are pretty known by the time you started, right? At least in certain aspects.
In certain circles, but we think we have a very innovative way of how we do it.
Okay.
So I have a last question, and then after that we'll have a few minutes. Please feel free to correct it. Okay? And so the last question, Satyam, you were mentioning when you were talking about your vision of how you could have taken this into many verticals like IoT and some other areas, right? And nothing got fulfilled. So what is the advice you have for some, let's say, aspiring entrepreneurs who want to start a security company in cybersecurity or security space, when you have 3,000 startups over there, well funded and everything is invested in something, and so that they can differentiate themselves. So what would you say? Is there an opportunity, or do you think everyone should just forget about security or go to storage? I'm just kidding.
It's interesting which one's more coverage. But you know, I mean, I think if you make up your mind saying, I want to work in area X, first of all, don't worry about the competition. You know, let me tell you the clean advice that I was given. You have 20 years of networking experience. We've been doing security for 20 years. Why do you think you can do anything in security? Right? Like, yeah, that makes sense. Give it a shot. Right? So there'll be enough, and this is again the thing, right? There'll be enough people who will come and tell you you can do it. If you build the right team and if you have the right core set of people, you will be able to do it. And there's one way to think about this, that there's 5,000 people, or they do this thing, they do that thing. If you have the innovation, you're solving a customer problem, and it's a genuine need of the hour, and you can sell it, it's going to be fine, right? So the thing is, there's different aspects. Like, imagine this, right? I mean, we didn't know all these companies that Palo Alto acquired before. Right? Or if you go and look at when Aporeto started, it got started as a container security company. And then we realized, oh, wait a minute, this could be cloud. Oh, wait a minute, this could actually be IoT and other things, right? So you realize some of those things, but you stick to the core. So the point I'm saying is that when we started, all of them were container security. Twistlock was container security. We are working with them. And now we're integrating them together. We are complementary. There was StackRox, there was Aqua, there was all of these things. All of these guys have taken an interesting approach. Some of them are going to succeed, some of them are going to fail, but we know that. So if you think there is a customer problem that you can solve, if there's a market opportunity and you have a product which is about right, a little bit of luck, I think you should go do it. Don't worry about the competition. You should have your focus on what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Satyam. So let's give a big round of applause to Satyam, to his wife, his father, for